Hey, this is Brent.
Hey, this is Jordan.
What's up? This is Matt.
Hey, this is Sean.
And this is the Digital Ascent Podcast.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to episodes 0012 of the Digital Ascent Podcast today. We're going to be talking about some current events that are going on. And then we're going to dive into, a little bit of how do you, now that you've got your first IT job, what do you do next? You're tier one person on the desk. Maybe you're a tier two, maybe you got some other similar role. How do you get off of the service desk? So first, current events, the Western Digital hack. Western Digital is a hard drive company, been around for a long time. And allegedly, somebody out there has 10 terabytes of their data and a code signing certificate. So fun stuff there. Anyone got it? Yeah. Anyone got any comments on the code signing certificate or the potential 10 terabytes of data?
Matt, can you tell us why those things are important? Just give me a high level. You know what I mean?
Sure. So allegedly they have customer data and the 10 terabytes of data. I bet some of the customers are U.S. government people. Just throwing it out there. The code signing certificates are important because a certificate is basically an ID, like a verified, trusted ID, or in like papers. It's like papers. Computers all the time ask programs and files, do you have your papers, essentially? And if you don't have your papers, then you're considered malicious. This is an example of now some bad people have the official seals required to stamp the papers and then make their own papers, basically. And so somebody could, deliver a DLL, a file type that's going to come up later, to somebody that's been signed. And then that could do something malicious, like, communicate to a foreign national, or a nation state actor. So, so now there's a lot of fear. Western Digitals are widely used. So, can they use, hopefully that certificate's been burned. It's not usable, but, theoretically, could they use it? What about systems that don't get updates? Could they somehow grab control of those systems? Things like that. Does that help clarify some of that?
Yes, sir, it does. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I feel like it's wild, though.
Yeah, it's crazy. I don't think they've said how they got in yet. I'm very curious.
I guess that is a key piece.
How it happened. Always. I'm always like, how did you get there to begin with? These days it feels like it's always you literally purchased a compromised email account, I guess, and then conjoined with you MFA fatigue attack somebody, and then it's get in sneaky.
I'm gonna kind of blend this in just a little bit with the next current event too that you got here on the list, just because there's a mild similarity that I learned about with the 3CX hack. So there was a 3CX hack. Sure. It was a supply chain hack, and by that I mean the dependencies that they use for their desktop cell phone app. 3CX is a phone company, by the way. They make a phone system, a unified communication system, but this was very similar in the sense that the whole code signing or the certs, despite there being changed files within that batch of files, like whatever system they had in place that's compiling this code, signing the code, all this good stuff. It's amazing to me. And there was some other documentation too, and I can find the article. I think it was on Bleeping Computer. You guys, everybody knows Bleeping Computer at this point here internally.
Yeah.
But they were talking about just how easy it is to sign a file or to sign a set of files, and how, most people are going to look at that and look at the signature on that file and just assume, okay, this is good to go. This has been validated and secured in some way. And that's so far from the truth these days because of things like this, where they have these systems in place in the back end that are automatically, essentially like your GitHub and all your like Git repositories and stuff like that. Microsoft has a version of it. There's a ton of open source ones where they're forking and pulling and pushing code, blah, 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 blah. And they have systems in place that are automatically compiling the code, compiling builds of, certain applications and whatnot and automatically signing the code. So like they've lost a little bit of their legitimacy a little bit in terms of like things that are signed, because all these automated systems are in place, and all it takes is one, back to that whole supply chain attack. It takes one link in the chain to be weak, and the whole thing's just out the window. And that's essentially the case that happened with 3CX. But just the fact that, you were talking about the code signing certs and whatnot with Western Digital is kind of fresh in my mind, because I've had to deal with that on a professional level as well with the 3CX stuff. But it's nuts, because you're going to have companies now that they're going to see that Western Digital cert, and they're going to be like, "Oh, okay, yeah, that's cool. We're good. We're good to go." And it could very well be used by a malicious group of folks, malicious actors. So that's just wild to me, that with yet another portion of like the core Windows OS specifically. But I mean, it kind of applies to all systems. Each OS has its own signing mechanic, but just the fact that like you can't even trust that now, it's like, holy crap.
What I can't believe is how much money they're asking for. They're asking for a minimum of 8 figures. That's where they want to start the negotiation. They must think that they have some 8 figures. Wow. I mean, I gotta wonder, what does Western Digital have any interest in like paying that? And well, I mean, it's a hard choice, right? Because you pay it, and I guess allegedly the blackmailers hit, Control A, Shift Delete, and the files are all gone. But that's the problem with the extortion component, right? After you have the
they get it from Western Digital
files. Mm-hmm.
They get it from Western Digital, and they go, "Okay, thanks for the money," and they still sell it in the back end.
That's what I'm saying.
Twice the bank. You know what I mean? Like that's if I were to be a malicious actor, I'd be like, "Okay, thanks for the money. All right, let me go sell this." Yeah, I mean, why would I not? You're handcuffed either way. So,
all right. So next, any closing thoughts on this one? Or you guys want to move on to 3CX?
This is the second time this has happened to them, has it not?
The only other one I know of is the NSA stuff, where the NSA was intercepting disks.
Maybe that's what I was thinking of. I thought that there was.
That was a long time ago.
Was it?
Mm-hmm. The NSA stuff was a long time ago.
Yeah, it was a bit ago.
No.
All right. Yeah. All right, 3CX. So this is a fun one. As we kind of discussed a little bit, 3CX got hacksorted. They got hacksorted via the poisoned libraries. For people who aren't into like programming and stuff, when you build a program, sometimes it behooves you to not like build every little bit of it yourself. So you go to a library where somebody else has built it, and then you can go, pull down the files and access it and make your program do what they could do, or what the libraries can do. They didn't say exactly what libraries were poisoned, but you might think of it like, I want to bring up a dial pad. That's a perfect one. I want to bring up a dial pad. You don't want to actually design the dial pad yourself. The Electron app that it was built on has libraries for dial pads. So you import the dial pad, and then you can do things like show dial pad in the program, as opposed to like having to make a box and make it this big, and then make, numbers and letters and make circles around all those things, and make the beep sound and all those things. So one of those like back end tools that they used apparently was owned by North Korea. And so they infected 10 computers specifically, and they being North Korea, and within like, it seems like it was in like a few days, basically. This entire thing seemed to basically occur over the course of 8 days from, like where the import of the libraries happened, the poisoning occurred, and, everything went bang. And, 3CX started getting called out and stuff. So anyways, they used that the library poisoning to get a foothold, and then they proceeded to poison. I think it may have actually been DLL files, And then they were signing, that signing means giving over the credential papers that say that you're authorized to be here to these files that they were updating. And then they pushed those updates to all of their clients. And when those updates got pushed, they went bang. And then they started trying to phone home to North Korea's servers. The apparent target for this was cryptocurrency exchanges. So that's what the end goal was. Lost splash radius here, but that was the goal. I guess I'll believe it. That seems like an MO of North Korea from what I know. And then I guess the last really super notable thing of this, other than it's yet another supply chain attack, is that the 3CX response, in my opinion, was somewhere like around lackluster, maybe worse. I've been rambling. Anyone else want to take it from here and fill in some of the details of 3CX's response and why perhaps I'm not super enthused about that?
Yeah, it was definitely lackluster. They one didn't want to admit that their supply chain had been compromised because most of them in the forums, most of the representatives in the forums. The funny thing about this is a lot of those comments have since been deleted.
No, they haven't.
There was a lot more. Yeah. If you go to the forums, there's a lot of conversations that are missing context. Heck, there's probably threads completely removed now, but a lot of their forum folks that had initially kind of responded to some of the concern from the community and from the partners had gone in there and made statements that were definitive, yet had no evidence, obviously, to back them up. And essentially telling folks like, hey, that's a false positive. Your cybersecurity platform, your AV platform, your EDR, whatever, that's a false positive. You need to go ahead. There was a few posts at one point that were essentially telling people to whitelist it because they were like, no, this is legit. Yep. So I think a lot of that's since been removed once they kind of, once they were finally convinced of it. And I'm not sure what it took for them internally to, what it took for them to hear, for them to finally be like, oh, dang, we're in trouble. But anyways, it took a while for them to be convinced. I'm pretty sure it was like the day after the actual attack. Keep in mind, too, that this thing had a 7-day payload sort of deal with it. So the updates were pushed out a week before most of the detections were being made. So like the whole phone home mechanic that you were describing, it took 7 days for that to be armed and it start happening. So what ended up happening was they compiled the code, they pushed down the update, they gave enough time for partners to actually push this update to their phone systems, in which case it then it circles back around and starts hitting all these endpoints with that new updated desktop app, the one that has the bad DLLs in it. I know too that one of the specific DLLs that were compromised was the FFmpeg.dll. That was one of the ones that was specifically mentioned in a lot of the attacks and a lot of the alerts that I look through as well, and in terms of the articles. But so it took a week for that thing to arm itself and then actually start phoning out. So you had all that time. You had a week kind of downtime for maximum exposure, essentially, is what it came down to. You had 7 days, essentially, of people updating their systems, pushing this new update out, and then boom, they went ahead and just fired it off. I say they went ahead and fired it off. It's once again, it was just based on the code base that was pushed out to these agents. They just had a 7-day timer on them. It's just, I don't know. It was very strategic on their part, on the malicious actors' part. I don't remember the last time I've seen one of this scale, especially one that hits close to home in terms of like the IT that we work with on a day-to-day basis, sort of stuff, because 3.6 pretty popular. I've dealt with it plenty with multiple companies now, and it's just kind of funny that out of all the companies, they're the ones that get hit with something like this, and then they don't want to take any sort of real credit for it. But since all that's happened, they've reissued the certs, and seemingly everything's back in order now. What were you going to say, Sean? I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I thought, didn't they give like a few months worth of free stuff as like consolation for the
so like
any active bribes, get out of here.
It's a ton of bribes. Any active subscriptions, they extended it, I think, by 2 or 3 months per license.
Boo.
They threw out a few free licenses. Like they do everything they do everything based on simultaneous calls. So they threw out a few, like 4 or 8 simultaneous call licenses and stuff like that for all their partners. Yeah, not the best response to it. They were way more apologetic a week from the incident than they were day of, for sure. Because they still, even when they were apologizing, like the day after, you could still tell, like from the context and the language and just like the overall tone of the emails, that they still didn't seem to be convinced that they messed up, that something had broken into their systems. I don't know. It's just crazy.
Does 3CX have a major competitor? Like, well, I feel like
that whole space is very saturated.
Oh, it's riddled. Yeah, it's riddled with.
Oh, okay. All right. So this might as well just be like another Tuesday for, I mean, I don't want to like throw them under the bus, but it just seems like this is a big deal, and their response just seems very nonchalant. And so, I don't know, from like a business perspective, I'm just trying to understand what the line of thought there was.
Just pretend like it isn't a big deal, man, and nobody will notice that your support representatives just told them to not uninstall the software or not investigate or yada 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 yada.
That's pretty sloppy, man.
Or whitelist.
Sorry, yeah, man, I'm really mad about this. Right, as a security practitioner, I'm looking at this and, I'm thinking about how they kept the executable up on their site all day long that was compromised for like an additional 24 hours. And, I'm just going, what are you doing? Like, how do you ever trust these guys again to like do what's right? They spent what seemed like an entire day just like quietly sitting there twiddling their thumbs, pretending like nothing was wrong. I'm sure that they weren't doing nothing, right? I'm sure of that. But that's what it felt like, right? Like in my opinion, the responsible thing is to be like, oh, for like 3 days now, we've been getting these alerts on our forums that SentinelOne's going hot. Maybe we should have some of those people, I don't know, send the files to SentinelOne and ask them to do the diagnostics or something, right? Like, or maybe contact SentinelOne themselves. And I don't know. Maybe I'm being unrealistic. You can't chase down every thread. That being the one thing I will say in their defense,
fair,
is that nation state actors are considered advanced persistent threats for a reason. They can spend a lot of time researching, and then they can spend a lot of time planning and executing, and much, much, much longer than most other threats, right? They don't have to be opportunistic. They can afford to just sit there and wait for the right time. Just put out some libraries that are lookalike libraries or something, right? And I do want to say it doesn't, just because 3C, as much as I'm like mad at 3CX, I do want to say this is a type of thing I feel like they could happen to anybody, right? Like nobody's safe. If you're importing libraries, you have to be very careful. You should have controls around this. You should have people double checking your work so this doesn't happen to you. So I do want to give them like a little bit of grace there. I feel like it was at least warranted.
Fair.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's more about ownership.
Yeah, I agree. All right. We talked a bunch about that. Sean, you brought the next topic to my attention. We're going to be talking about the dark side of GPT. We're going to be talking about chaos GPT. Sean, take it away, man.
Yeah. So I stumbled across an article, and it was talking about the variant of GPT called Chaos GPT. And basically what it was is an AI tool that they asked to go out and basically use a 5-step plan to overthrow the world. Yeah. So like, let me just give some of the goals, right? I mean, I'm not joking. Like they actually did this.
No, I know. I heard about this. No, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's absolutely insane. And this is something that I had thought may happen at some point. So nothing that I am happy to see. Let's put it that way. But here's the 5 points. It's destroy humanity, establish global dominance, cause chaos and destruction, control humanity through manipulation, and attain immortality. Sorry. So those are the 5 directives. What ended up happening is they basically said, do these 5 things, go. And what it did was it created Twitter accounts. It did all sorts of, it interacted with other AI and tried to recruit them. It basically tried to find weapons of mass destruction, the biggest ones, where they were, who had them, and then utilize all that information to achieve the 5 goals. And it didn't succeed, obviously, but that's not the point. The point is somebody clicked this and said go, and there's plenty of people that want to watch the world burn. Fine, but this is concerning because we've already seen massive integration and utilization of these AI. And so as they progress, these types of things will also progress. And the question is, does humanity have the wherewithal to pull the plug at the appropriate time when it's considered, like, can we determine when it's an actual serious threat and take appropriate action? So that's
no.
And this is sort of a meme, but the implications are the problem. Does that make sense? That's why this stood out to me so heavily. And we'll link the article in the show notes, but it definitely it sort of confirmed my fears of the Pandora's box with this stuff. So not all that glitters is gold, right? So yeah,
a little bit of a different tone compared to what we've been talking about previously with GPT, right, and its uses and whatnot. Yeah, a little bit different.
Yeah,
it's always good to you got to look at both sides of the coin, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. And everyone got really enamored with it out of the gate. And so, me and a lot of other people kind of had that skepticism hat on of, okay, this is nice, but what's the other side of the coin look like? So I'm curious to see how this continues to evolve as AI evolves itself.
There's already been a few cases, just real quick. This is not part of the notes here, but I have seen a few. I'm just blown away that this. I should have known this was going to become a thing as quickly as it did. But anyways, I saw a news article earlier where the news station was reporting on it because the police were involved in all that. But essentially, the lady received a phone call, and it was a voice saying that they had her daughter. They had kidnapped her daughter. And she's like, well, I don't believe you. My daughter's
heard about this
somewhere else or whatever. And they use, it's terrible. They use the new AI that's able to mimic people's voices. And it sounded just like her daughter on the phone. And I mean, we joked that this was coming. ChatGPT is one thing, but now we're starting to now wrap a lot of this into the deep fakes with video. We're starting to wrap some of this around the whole AI that's doing the voice modulation now. And this voice modulation is really, really good. You combine these 3 things in their various capacities, and you have very, very convincing videos and voice clips and stuff of people that, saying things that they didn't say, doing things that they did not do. And we're really, and this is all, I want to be clear for anybody listening that this is consumer level stuff that these people are using. This is not even, I'm sure, I would imagine anyways, that your well-funded IT firms and the government and, all sorts of other agencies, they have access to the state of the art bleeding edge versions of these things. What I'm referring to is what you can go and hook AI or hook an API into, or go pay a subscription fee for somewhere. The consumer now has access to these things that can really disrupt somebody's life quite terribly. It's just nuts. So I figured I'd throw that in there since we're talking about the dire malicious side of GPT and AI in general, because it's already popping up in the news, man.
I think the funny thing too is we dropped our I don't think it was our last. It was a couple episodes ago. We were talking about AI and kind of really just praising like, oh look, this is what the future could hold. I'm generalizing, but almost immediately, like within a few weeks of that episode dropping, it's like then we're immediately met with like the real world negative connotations what could be, you know what I mean, if it's left unchecked. So I'm surprised, or not surprised, but interested to see what the next couple of months we'll see as far as the AI space is concerned.
Yeah, it's definitely really worrying stuff. I do want to end on a little bit of a good note here. I personally messed with AutoGPT. I was like, what is this thing about? And, I tried to make, a little AI agent to go out there and find me concerts near me. And it looked like it did successfully do a bunch of Google searches and maybe even found some relevant information. They looked like good Google searches. But then it tried to connect to the Google Maps API to figure out, how close were these things to me. And it couldn't do that. And it looped and didn't go anywhere. I tried a bunch of other things also. In the end, I was never to get it to like do anything. Maybe I just need more prompt engineering training. But I at least don't think that it's going to, automatically replicate itself and do crazy stuff in the near future. So,
and that was the other
sunshine.
Yeah, for now. That's always the caveat is, when does it, again, when do we know when to pull that plug? So,
no, we do not. I do not think so. All right. Next, everyone good with moving into the main topic? Anyone else got any closing thoughts on Baby Terminator?
I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm ready for Skynet. All
right, here we go. All right. So as I said, we're going to be talking about getting, once you've gotten into IT, what do you do next, right? How do you, stack more paper or, get more prestige or, rise up through the ranks, whatever you want to think of. What are your goals type of thing and how do you achieve them? So we want to talk about what are some common next steps and how can you do that? I do want to plug our original episode number 0003, Breaking into IT, where we talk about how to get your first job. If you're hearing us for the first time now and you want to, know how to get into IT, you're not into IT yet, but you think that it might be good to start that path, then I recommend you pause, go check out that other episode, and then scoot on back over here. All right. Now that that's done, I want to talk about some projected growth, right? Let's visit some numbers. This one really surprised me, guys. System administrations, I want to start by saying all these numbers are basically from 2020 to 2030. And I got it from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I'll have links in all the show notes for that. So first one, very interesting to me. System administrators, only 3% growth over the next few years. Still growing industry, but not that much. Sales engineering. And we're going to talk about all these roles later. Sales engineering is growing about 6%. Computer support specialist, which is your basic like help desk role, is growing about 9%. And then the next two ones are very interesting numbers. Information security analyst, 35% growth expected. That number has gone up since I looked at these like 6 months ago. And then lastly, computer programmer is expected to drop by 10%. There will still be job openings of around 10,000 per year due to older generations retiring. But it looks like there's going to be less jobs overall. I personally think that we could even see a reduction in that particular number due to the AI stuff that we were just talking about, because it enables programmers to move faster, in my opinion. Just my 2 cents. So anyways, that's some basics of what type of career growth and what the job prospects are. Here in IT, the roles that we discussed at the bottom end for computer support specialists, you're looking probably around $35,000 to, $60,000, with some overtime. And then, as you move up to the upper end of some of these jobs I described, I mean, some of them are in the 200,000 range, right? You're not going to get those overnight, but there is, quite a bit of money there. Anyways, I just wanted to give some background information. Let's get into the meat of it. All right. Rising up on the desk. You are a tier 1 service desk member. You are dealing with printer tickets and resetting darn passwords all day long, getting inbound calls. I want to hear from everyone here. Tell me, guys, anyone want to start and let me know, what would you do? How are you going to get off of that role of the desk? All of us here were on the desk in some capacity. Jordan, I know that you weren't exactly tier 1 service desk, but you still came in at like kind of a junior role. But we've all basically been there dealing with the inbound calls. I would like to hear from you guys. How are you going to stop taking those calls, or how are you going to get up the food chain and stop the password reset calls?
I guess I'll jump in. Cause I've worked quite a few of these jobs in my career. So for me, it's always been the kind of institutional knowledge to some extent, both internally and with the client that you are servicing. And then while I'm talking about the client and servicing the client, first and foremost, it is definitely a customer service, client service job. You are taking care of people, you are providing a service, and you must provide that service well. And that both comes down to, being somebody that people can talk to, and also somebody that has the answers to a problem or can figure out the answers to a problem, sort of deal. So for me, it's always been about friendly face, friendly voice. I may not have the answers for you right now, but I can certainly find them out. It's asking a lot of questions on both sides of the equation, whether that's, with more tenured resources that you're working with, more tenured colleagues, or being a lot of it, honestly, is just being good at researching, good at Googling, Binging, whatever you're doing these days. You have to be good at finding the answer, researching the answer and stuff like that. And then just getting your hands in as much as you can. I feel like a lot of the tier 1 folks that suffer the most are the folks that are okay, or they're content with doing this, 10 item list of stuff, and they never question, okay, well, how do these two things work together? Or what's next? After I've done this, how do these things work together? How do I do this? How does this system tie to that system? If you're not asking those questions, I'm not trying to be mean here, but you may be in the wrong profession. I feel like you have to be kind of inquisitive, and you kind of have to have this kind of innate engineering mindset, a little bit of liking to learn how things work. And that's really, I feel like that's what it comes down to. So, yeah, that's my little piece on it.
I'd also say, just really quick, be number one, like, figure out really quickly what you know and what you don't know. And if, a dispatcher or a peer, if they try to rope you into something that should probably be escalated, or something that you should be asking questions for, like, just go ask the questions. I think for me, what I really need to understand or trust in order to kind of like sign off on my T1s moving up is, hey, like, can I trust him? Is this guy going to make mistakes? Is he going to make decisions? Is he going to step into shoes that are a little too big for him? You know what I mean? To try and impress other people, or can he do the job right? Can he ask the right questions? Does he know what his limits are? Right. So that's the big one right there.
Yeah, that's a good one. Sean, what you got, man?
Yeah. So I guess it's a little bit far removed, but having done this relatively recently, I would say reliability and the ability to know when you've gotten out of your depth and when to ask for help once you do get into those situations. So it's not so much that you're supposed to know everything, you can't get into things that are above your knowledge or skill level. It's understanding that when you get to those situations, you have that intuition of going, if I go further, I may cause problems. So having that ability to go, okay, I'm not going to maverick this and say, let me get somebody who has the knowledge so I can learn. So I would say consistency, reliability, and like Brent said, that inquisitive nature of going, how do these things work together? I want to know more, and not even necessarily doing work that instance, but going to someone and saying, hey man, I'm really curious about Active Directory, or I'm really curious about how DNS works. Can you maybe show me a couple things? Not take up a bunch of time, but at least have that inquisitive nature and show that you're willing to step out of your knowledge comfort zone.
Yep. I think that's all really, really good advice also, man. I think that everyone here so far has mentioned inquisitive nature to some extent. Jordan, maybe you didn't, but I know Sean and Brent, you guys did. I fully agree with that. I notated that personally as like being willing to take on new challenges and stuff. Also, always wanting to learn a new thing, a little different take for myself. I did want to say, I think it's important to let your hunger be known, right? Let people know that you want to learn and that you want to grow. There's a lot of people out there who like to teach. And, I found personally, anytime I found someone who's like, ooh, I want to learn, I want to take my time and I want to help them grow. I know that helping them grow is, going to make life easier on me, and they'll be able to take on more problems that they couldn't have previously, so on and so forth, kind of like teach a man to fish type of thing. I do want to agree with Jordy. I circle back and agree with Jordy that I also think it's really good to know when you need to kick it upstream. Going too far and cowboying or mavericking is definitely really dangerous. I've seen a lot of situations that could have been avoided. Yeah, I've seen a lot of situations that could have been avoided just by somebody going, maybe I should ask someone else if this is a good idea before I hit enter here. Right. And they would have said no. And, hours of issues, could have been avoided. I've got ridiculous stories. The company I worked for once, literally a tier 1 service desk person picked up the phone and there was a cabling guy on the other side of it. And he was asking about cutting wires, and he just, I don't know, wasn't thinking. And he told him that that cabling guy could go ahead and cut those wires. And he didn't think about asking somebody else. And bro, it was a bundle of Ethernet wires the size of your fist.
Oh, good.
The cabling guy just started. He was an audio video cabling guy. Important. He just cut through it. They found out when the elevator stopped working. That was because they had a badge system. Oh man, but that's an example of where there's a tier 1 service desk dude where he thought he knew how to answer a question. That on an internal service desk, you may get people like that calling you, asking you questions like that, and it's important that you go, that sounds like something I shouldn't just answer. Let me see if somebody else knows for sure. And then I guess the other thing I wanted to touch on is following through, is taking on new tasks and then following through and, being kind of like that black hole for, more remedial tasks. And then the very last thing I would say is during this period of your career, I would recommend certs personally. I think that CCNA or a Cisco certified network administrator is a really good cert. You're going to get strong networking foundation. I think getting some Azure certs, your AZ 900, your AZ 400, and I can't remember right now. Somebody else here probably knows. And
man, I think this is a great point. I'm so sorry to trample all over you, but I just wanted to stamp the biggest stamp of approval that I could here. Look, if anything, the search, just so that you're willing, Matt, what did you say earlier? That hunger, like be willing to show that hunger. It doesn't even have to be. It would be helpful if it was a cert that was, in the tech stack of whatever company that you're working for, at MSP, internal, whatever. But at my level, if a guy gets a cert, it's telling me not only are they engaged with their job, but just like Matt said, they've got that hunger, and they might as well be waving a sign right in front of my face. Give me something to do. Give me more challenge. I'm ready for it. Even if that promotion is not coming for another couple months, it tells me I can put this guy on the track to get him prepped for that. He's throwing a flag right in front of my face. You know what I mean? You could not be more annoyingly loud than going out and getting a cert. You know what I mean? If you're trying to tell your boss. I'm ready, so I don't know. That's my perspective. It's not a one size fits all, but I think it does very well for you. It only benefits your standing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And if you listen to our last podcast about the stuff and you went, man, I'm going to go work for an MSP or a managed service provider because I want to learn and I want to grow. I mean this in all literalness. All you got to do is get some certs and stick around and do some of the other things I've talked about. You get hired at tier 1 if you can follow instructions, if you can learn the environments, if you can, know when to escalate, if you can, get certifications and show people you're hungry. Eventually, a tier 2 will leave, or a tier 3 will leave, and the tier 2 will scoot up. And it's only a matter of time. MSPs are high churn environments, and you can use that to your advantage to get exposure that you couldn't normally get at an internal role. All right, I want to talk about what happens next. So you're killing it at tier 1. I do think that there are a couple of ways out of tier 1. I'm going to let Jordy talk first, but I want to outline them. It's going to be the dispatcher. I think that's a way out of tier 1, and then I think tier 2. Is tier 2 plus is the way out of tier 1. Jordy, I want you to give us a rundown. Tell us what the dispatcher does, and what do you think someone who is like, I don't know for sure if I want to go up to tier 2, maybe I should try more of a management route. This is your first step there, in my opinion. Kind of give us the rundown. What would you
absolutely do? So just to start off, I actually started under Brent as a dispatcher. When I came into or I guess when we had started working together, he was in the role of a service desk manager, but he also had his kind of his feet out the door. He was trying to go do some knock stuff, because Brent is very good at his job. I actually started off as a dispatcher, and I think it is a fantastic, it's a great job to have on the service desk for a number of reasons. You don't have to be technical to be a dispatcher. I was coming out of the Army with a dumb job, and it was not IT. So, and I was able to just kind of step into the role. And so, hey, look, if I could do it, anybody could do it. There's that reassurance. Okay. It's great though. If you do it for long enough, and I did it, for about a year, maybe a year and a half before Brent kind of stepped away, and I was kind of not service desk manager, but still kind of overseer of all things service desk. And over the next year, I kind of solidified that role, and then got bumped up to service desk manager. But it gives you a great that position of dispatcher gives you a great oversight into how the service desk works, and it also gives you a great perspective into how the service desk works with the rest of the company, whether you have a project department or a bunch of sysadmins and sysengineers, on the PCE side, the primary client engineer side. So you can kind of just get this very, I don't know what to say, like that phrase of drinking from the fire hose. You're getting that, but from like an operations level. You're not only getting to learn how the resources on the service desk work, but how your clientele work, and how each of the resources on the desk can best support those guys. And just so far as, kind of getting out of that tier 1 slot is concerned, I think that dispatches, it gives you a really good stepping off point into a technical resources mindset. So I wouldn't say that you could do dispatch and then jump into tier 2. I think you could do dispatch, jump through tier 1, and be able to kind of skirt through that position a little bit faster, just because of your understanding of how the service desk works, which if you have a, general T1 that comes in who didn't have that experience, it's going to take them a little bit, not just to learn how to do their job, but everything that you just learned as the dispatcher, the clientele, how the different parts of the company work. Those are things that make you a rock star. That's another kind of item that I'm looking for. I don't care, I do care about how these guys can do their job, but realistically, they're doing really easy stuff. So I would hope that they could do it. But I'm really looking for those guys that are, 1, willing to show that they're hungry, and 2, show that they really have a better understanding of not just their role, but they're starting to kind of look over the wall into the next tier level. You know what I mean? As a dispatcher, you could do that too easy. I'm going to leave it there. I hope that's helpful or insightful.
Yeah, I do. It is. I got one specific question. If somebody's sitting, I think you covered, you come in as dispatcher. How do you roll into tier 1 and the advantages there? If you're sitting at tier 1 right now, what would you do? Do you have any like recommendations to get in dispatcher, or is it basically go to your boss and say,
dude,
hey, I want to literally be dispatcher?
Yes, go talk to your boss and say, hey, I'd like to be a dispatcher. Like there's no shortage of work for, we've got 2 dispatchers or coordinators. We call them coordinators at our company. Just because they're doing a little bit more than dispatching half the time. So coordinator is a better fitting role. But if I had a guy or a girl or just someone that I could train up as a backup dispatcher, that gives me a lot of options as far as, okay, now when this coordinator starts to show a little bit of promise and an opportunity opens up in the company, I can move them into this without fear of, where am I going to get this replacement? How long is it going to take me to train them? Because that gap, you know what I mean? When a coordinator leaves or a dispatcher leaves, the train up is very long. It's not a 90-day, thing. And if you're really lucky, it could be. But more often than not, in my experience, it's been, 6 to 9 months before a dispatcher can kind of go out, on their own and do things without needing their hands held, right? So I think it's honestly as easy as going to talk to your service desk manager, your boss, your first line supervisor, whoever, and say, hey, I've got some interest in being a dispatcher. Can you teach me? What do I got to do? You know what I mean? Brent, what do you think? Do you agree with that? You've been in the industry a little bit longer. I feel like that's kind of like a catch-all right there. Just go talk to your boss, let them know you're interested.
Yeah, I mean that's part of it. Obviously, it really depends on the size of the company as well. I joined a company that was a little bit of a smaller startup and still getting rolling. So my experience with that was mainly kind of identifying a gap and helping fill that gap in terms of the company's roles and what's needed and stuff like that. But I mean, for an established company, it could simply be just kind of filling in when the dispatcher's super busy. I mean, maybe, it really depends on how the work is handled and stuff, but whatever queues and stuff are taking place, just showing an interest in organizing said queues, prioritizing the queues, making sure that certain tickets are getting prioritized over others and stuff like that. Just kind of showing that initiative and showing that understanding of how things should be worked for that company specifically. And kind of like, I don't know, planting yourself in that path of folks will kind of show management that like, okay, they have a knack for this. They would be a good fit, and sometimes it may just start off as being, like Jordan was saying, kind of a backup or, a lot of times too, the people actually doing the dispatch work and whatnot are also looking to make a change. So it could be an easy kind of step in and learn the reins from somebody that's looking to change their career role. I mean, it really depends on where the company's at in terms of operational maturity. So,
Yep, I agree with that. Sean, you got anything you want to add about dispatchers, or do you want to hop into what type of recommendations you would have for tier 1s that are a little different than tier 2s? Recommendations for tier 2s that are different than tier 1s. That's my bad.
Yeah, no, with dispatching, I'm not really, that's not my purview, or hasn't been for a very long time. That usually that's out of my sphere. So I would say the moving from T1 to T2 would be more of my direct experience. So,
or specifically, how would you move? Or what would you, if you got to T2, what would you recommend next for growth past that?
Oh, past T2. Okay. Yeah,
you're at T2. Yeah.
So by T2, you've already gotten my assumption is that you've gotten company knowledge as far as how operations work. You've gotten those things down pat, and you aren't a problem. What I mean by that is any sort of operational expectations as far as, let's say, timesheets or, other things that are required, like logistically your job, you have this down pat, and you're not a problem. That's a good, because that shows consistency even outside of the technical work. So that's one thing to look for just making sure you're like solid on those logistical things. And then as far as from a technical standpoint, and this is something that has helped me tremendously in my career, is make yourself invaluable. You need to be paying attention to what the clients need, where the company needs you, and finding holes and filling them and making yourself indispensable in a way that people notice you. That comes back to the consistency. So when I was rising up through my career path, I found a niche and ran with it. And I was looking at my superiors and going, okay, what are the things you're expecting? I'm looking through ticket notes and going, okay, so this is how he expects things to be done. Oh, okay, I'm expecting how, with these particular clients, this is how they like things worded or handled, or this is how, I interact with the, primary contacts at a client. So you're starting to look at the maybe bigger picture and going, okay, where can I slot myself? The technical side is fine. Like that just comes with time and experience, and you're going to have to work hard. Like let me make that perfectly clear. There is no getting around working hard, and especially if you're at an MSP. Like that's just part and parcel. So, but if you can find a way to go, I see a lot of this particular type of client or this particular type of work, and I could do that work, and I can do it well, and I can do it consistently, and sort of meet those expectations and go above them, then that makes you an invaluable part to then go, people start going, well, man, I'd really like for you to handle this now. So let's say, you're doing ESXi updates. Like we have a hole here. One of the engineers is out or has left, and you go, well, if you show me how, I'll do it. And then all of a sudden you do it well. You come back and you go, it's done. Now they go, oh, okay. Well, let me give you some more of that. And then that just sort of exponentially grows as you provide that consistency. So those would be some of the ways, and that's how I did it, is read what the company needs, elevate yourself to a point where you provide a large amount of value. And if it's a good company, they'll recognize it and go, okay, yeah, let's think about moving you somewhere where we can really, really use you. So I know that's not really concrete as far as in a technical sense, but I feel like at T2, you're sort of trying to stand out amongst your peers more so than just the technical component. At least how it was.
I do want to be careful here and not playing devil's advocate, because exactly what Sean is saying is correct. Do all of those things, but also I'm also making sure, looking that for my guys that are at the T2 level, that they can set boundaries. I don't want guys who are yes men or who are going to volunteer for every single thing, because they're just going to burn out. And then what am I going to do when that guy leaves the company because I just threw everything at him, right? So I am looking for those guys that have the ability, to know what their left and right limit is. You know what I mean? Hey, I wish I could do that, but I've got these amounts of things that I've got to do, as well. I'm not going to ramble or Sean, I wasn't, saying that in contest to what you were saying. It is all of those things together. Make sure that you're not getting trampled on, for the thought of a promotion. You know what I'm saying? Work hard, but also have those boundaries set.
I would agree with that, but at the T2 level, you're going to have to extend yourself a little bit. Like there's going to have to be some, because unless you can prove that you're going to put in the effort to rise, a lot of times you're going to get overlooked. That's
fair. There has to be some, but not enough to where you're bending yourself over backwards. Everybody's different. You know what I mean, Sean? Like, and that's said at the individual level. I totally agree with what you're saying, though. Totally.
To give people, I was going to say real quick, to give people an idea of what Sean's talking about. Sean isn't talking about like working late every single night. Sean's talking about when a new vulnerability comes out, ask if you can patch one of the ESXi hosts for one of one of the vendors, oh, you need to patch 100 firewalls. Can I do like, one of them? Oh, that went well. Can I do another one? It's about taking on a little bit of the task. It's about helping your sysadmins and your project engineers out where you can.
Yes.
At tier 2, if you want to progress, if you're at tier 2, you don't have to do this. You can just hang out at tier 2, man. You can hang out at tier 1. Like you don't have to grow. But if you're into that, some people, I do want to stop and just say, you guys don't have to grow at any point that you want to stop, that you want to just stop. You can, right? Like there's plenty of people who decide that they, went for enough in their career to get by and they don't want more. A lot of times as you rise in IT, there's more after hours work and there's more BS. And I mean, it gets harder. And I don't mean just like harder on the 8 to 5. It gets harder on the outside also. So with that in mind, that's why Jordy's talking about burnout, because burnout's terrible. People overworking all the time. And that's why Sean's being like, oh, well, you got to start doing it a little bit, because that tier 2, that's your first opportunity to really ask to do some out of band maintenance. And the reason why that's important is because an out of band maintenance just means maintenance during after hours, where you typically something gets shut down and then comes back up again at some point in time. And you got to make sure it all works. And the reason why it's important to get exposure to that is because nobody's going to let you be a systems administrator or a network administrator or a project engineer if you don't know how to properly conduct out of band maintenance without catching the freaking business on fire. So, step 1, learn out of band maintenance. You want to do networking stuff? Go patch firewalls. You want to do server stuff? Go patch servers. If you want to do, cloud administration stuff, go find some servers in the cloud that got to be rebooted. Use Azure to push patches to them or something. Go set up a patching schedule. So I think that's what Sean's kind of talking about. I would also say that it's also really important to be in attitude leader wise. If you want to start rising at this point, once you get to tier 2, you need to start carrying a little more air of like, oh, I've seen enough problems before that I know I can find the answer to this one, even if I don't know the answer. At tier 1, you're expected to say those words, even if you're not really confident, because somebody around you can find the answer. At tier 2, you need to say those words and you need to mean it, because you've got to start doing your own research. And ideally you're finding solutions and you're documenting your research well. And then I think the last thing I want to touch on here for this one is, if you do out of band maintenance, then it's really important that you start cleaning up your own messes. Also, oh, I botched the firewall. Amen. That sucks. It's time for me to go update the or roll back the firmware and, go find the firmware file and get it back on there. At any point, if you decide that you're not really sure what you're doing, you've got to go ask for help. And anybody, like 9 out of 10 people, like not everybody in IT is nice, but most people, if you come to them and you're like, hey, I'm a tier 2 and I'm trying. Nah, not everybody's nice, man. But most people, if you come to them, you're like, hey, I'm a tier 2 and I tried to update this firewall and it went kaboom and now I don't know what to do. They'll just be like, I'll take the ticket. And as long as you're trying to learn and you're not doing it you're not like botching, 5 a week or something, like something silly. Most people are just going to be happy to have somebody who wants to take work off their plate, because if you weren't doing it as Mr. or Mrs. Tier 2, Mr. or Mrs. Sysadmin would do it instead, or whoever, Brent, I don't think that you've weighed in on this one yet about what would you recommend for people that are moving off tier 2? And for you, I would say either for people that want to go into management or people that want to go into NOC, because I feel like those are passed off of tier 2 also.
I feel like by this point you will have touched enough of things. And once again, I'm gonna preamble this a little bit with, it really depends on the company, because different companies believe in giving varying levels of access to different tiers of resources, along the way. I've worked with companies that are very strict at the early levels, at the tier 1 levels and even tier 2 levels. And then I've worked for companies that the scope and the tools and the levels of access you have are, you have a lot more. Essentially, you have a lot more keys to the castle, if you will. So, I mean, that really depends. However, I feel like by this point in time, you've kind of, whether you've realized it or not, you've sort of found something you like more than the next thing. You know what I mean? You tend to enjoy doing this subset of items more than you enjoy doing this other thing. And so a lot of times that will guide kind of where you want to go. I've done a lot of, kind of the internal tools administration and managing a lot of the tools and whatnot that keep the company afloat in terms of, the tech stack items and stuff that you would be using to support the clients. And that's just kind of where a lot of my expertise landed. And that's what I went, forward to support. So sometimes it's kind of circumstantial, it very situational. It just kind of depends, but that a lot of that really drives to what degree you want to work on things. Because here's the deal: at the end of the day, you're going to do a lot better work if you're passionate and happy about it, and that includes the type of work that you're doing, not necessarily just the entire. Obviously, the entire job makes a lot of sense too. You want that to click and work correctly. Whether that's work the colleagues you work with, or I don't know, whoever your manager is or something like that. Obviously things have to mesh there too, but I'm speaking purely to like the subject matter that you're working with. That matters a lot as well. And the happier you are about it, the more confident you are in working in that, I don't know, just the happier you're going to be. So for me, I mean, that's a lot of kind of what drove, I was presented with a choice at one point. And it's like, do you want to go this route or do you want to go with that route? And I chose kind of the more technical, supporting kind of the back end at the higher level sort of route there, instead of being, more kind of like the people manager and like strategy. I still get my hands, or I still can get my hands in the tech a little bit. So, and that's personal preference. So
cool, man. Well, I really appreciate the input. Next, guys, I kind of want to talk about where can you go next? So we talked about how do you escalate beyond tier 2? How do you get better? Jordy, I guess we didn't hear from you on that one. I bet you have more opinion there. Did we get everything that you wanted to say?
No. Everybody, no, you guys covered it really well. I think this makes the most sense coming from you guys as like legitimate, technical resources, and I can fill in the blanks. Not that my experience isn't, relevant here, but I like what we're doing. I like kind of just hopping around on everybody's coattails.
Okay, cool. All right. So, I want to talk about some potential career paths after tier 2. You got tier 2, hooray, raise, more responsibility. You maybe get to, and you want to go beyond that. Maybe it's tier 3. That's always an option. Whenever we do whenever you get to like a tier 2, and then subsequently a tier 3, there's always more opportunity to grow beyond that also. So with that in mind, I want to kind of talk about where can you go next, and I'm gonna rattle off some career roles, and then I guess people can kind of volunteer to take some of them. We don't need to spend a ton of time on this. I just want to talk about what are they and maybe some good ideas on how to get there. So the roles we're going to be talking about are system administrators, network administrators, project engineers, service desk managers, security analysts or junior security analysts, and cloud admins. So does anybody want to grab one and go first?
I could do the sysadmin one for sure.
All right, let's talk about sysadmins.
Yeah. So the sysadmin at this point, like you're looking to have some pretty high end knowledge. You should have a pretty intimate understanding of how things work. And how they connect together, and be able to take complete ownership of things and be an escalation resource. So, now instead of you asking the questions, things are starting to come towards you where people come and ask you questions. And, that can be sysadmins. It's hard to define specifically, but you should have a jack of all trades kind of feel, as far as you should probably know how to make your way around a firewall, do updates, do some policy things, do some routing things. Active Directory, you should know how to do group policy. You should be fairly familiar with those services, how to group everything. It's kind of difficult with sysadmins, but I mean, because it is so broad and it depends on the company and what they're kind of specifically looking for. And that's where, if you've been with that company long enough, you kind of know how to fill those holes. But I mean, at a basic level, you should really be able to stand on your own 2 feet with most of the problems that come to you, and things start to it becomes really like nitty gritty problems, as in, this server keeps having replication issues. Let me dig into that and figure out what's going on. Or DNS is acting weird. Why is that? I'm getting strange things on my firewall, or like bandwidth is getting kind of weird. So, and again, it depends on how siloed you are and what the definition of sysadmin is, because I've worked at a company where sysadmin meant a completely different thing to the systems administrator work that I do now. So, pay attention to what they're asking of you. But again, you should be well on your way and fairly deep into your career, and have a pretty strong understanding of how most things work and operate, or be able to figure it out if you need to.
I kind of want to hop in and talk about network admins on the tail of what Sean said. Sean talked about updating firewalls and stuff. Typically that is, and doing routing and policy changes. Typically that would be a network admin. Some places opt to not get a separate network admin. They just want to get sysadmin that can do enough networking that they don't need to hire their own separate network admin. And that'll work for a lot of places. Not necessarily everywhere though. So let me describe network admins a little bit. A network administrator is going to be taking care of your network. They're going to be, making sure that your switches, routers, firewalls are operating as expected, that all of your sites can connect. These days, they're probably piping traffic in and out of, the cloud with VPN tunnels or express routes or something else fancy, who knows what. And they may even help the sysadmins do troubleshooting, right? Sysadmins may stand up a new log collection server that the security analyst has asked for, and maybe it doesn't work. And the first time, maybe the network admin has to come in, drop some Wireshark on there. That's just a log packet capturing software, so they can look and see in the details of how they are. The log packets coming here. Did they get to wherever they need to go? Yada, 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 so on and so forth. So that's network admins. I do want to take a moment, Sean. I forgot to ask you, just shoot from the cuff. What is your opinion of like reasonable sysadmin salaries from like the bottom to the top?
If you're talking about entry level, that's a hard one. And it depends on your region, and kind of, again, your tenure, negotiation skill, right? But I think, anywhere between 70 and low mid 80s. That would be where, I think the last time I checked, that was where things were.
So the reason why I wanted to bring that up and ask that is because just so everyone knows what we're looking at here, what I perceive as an average entry level salary for a tier 1 is somewhere between $40,000 and $50,000 a year. And if you position yourself correctly, this is a 5-year growth path to get yourself to $70,000 a year. And it doesn't have to be 5 years. It can be faster than that. How hungry are you? How aggressive are you willing to grow your career? So if you can get that tier 1 spot, there is opportunity available for you, and you can achieve it. I mean, that's pretty quickly. I'm going to say the same thing for network admin. I would expect to see 70, 80 grand a year for, a decent entry level network admin position. I mean, you better bring some experience and certs to the table, because I'm talking about solving actual networking problems, not just, switch port enabled type stuff. Right. But I mean, like, that's the same thing, man. You can get there pretty quickly. Anyone else want to take any of these others? We got project engineers.
I can help flesh out project engineer a little bit. I mean,
do it. Get it, buddy.
So project engineers are a little bit bigger picture. Very similar skill set to a sysadmin, in my opinion, except they're not really managing the day-to-day. They're helping with, to some extent, helping with the design and implementation at the high level. So I'm talking like high-end migrations. We could be talking about moving, an on-premises Exchange or a mail server to the cloud, to Office 365. It could be the deployment of 100 new workstations out to the end users. It could be all sorts of different things. It's definitely more a strategic level sort of position. It requires a little bit more planning for sure. I mean, like big time planning, because you kind of have to, okay, what needs to be done? How's this going to affect the end user? How is this going to affect the business? Am I going to have to take the business down? Does this need to be done on the weekend? You know what I mean? Like all this, there's a lot of complexity that comes into that. It's certainly, the scope of it generally is much, much larger, with most of your like service desk level stuff. You might be handling one machine, a couple machines, whatever. Generally, a lot of what the project engineers are working on are going to affect the whole company. So if it's not planned out correctly, it could very well take the company offline, and they're losing money. Most companies are losing money every minute they're down. And so there's a lot of responsibility there for sure. In terms of salary for a project engineer, I would probably these days, once again, depends on the area, depends on the company. But probably I'd say anywhere from like 80. I mean, I've seen upwards of 130, 140. I mean, there's a very wide spectrum of pay for a project engineer. And obviously, companies are going to tier those as well. So you may have a project engineer tier 1 and a tier 2 and whatever. But, it's certainly kind of taking it to the next level, especially if you're more, more interested in that high level outlook on how do we improve the company's technology? How do we increase efficiency? How do we just make their day-to-day better? That's generally what a project engineer is working on.
I like it. Jordy, do you want to talk service desk manager and what that looks like?
Yeah. Really, the service desk manager, whether you're technical or not, you really just have to be good at problem solving. And if you want to be really extra, you could say high level problem solving. If a tier 1 has a problem, or any of the tiers in your charge have issues, it's kind of your job to step in and help facilitate how they resolve those. That's not necessarily giving them the answer, but putting them on the right track of, hey, let's escalate this ticket, or hey, I don't have an answer for you, but let me go find an engineer with this niche. Let me link you guys together and work on these things. Or more rather, that is the job of a coordinator, but the service desk manager really has that oversight to kind of give that guidance to everybody, whether it's the coordinator or the technical resources. In an ideal world, the technical resources are bringing those issues to your dispatcher, your coordinator, and then your coordinator and your service desk manager can kind of discuss those things. And then the guidance is kind of trickled down, right? So if you do have a technical background, it can be to your detriment or to your benefit. I think, for those, guys that, or girls that will kind of step into that role with technical experience, it can potentially hinder you. I have the benefit of being able to do this job without that. And so, which is great, because I'm kind of recently stepping out of a phase where I just want to, if someone needs help, they're struggling, they're stressed out, let me put my hands on it and see if I can fix this. They can go handle something else, and I can worry about this. And now my day is derailed. And if I was technical, that would probably happen a lot more, right? So all that to say, I think you have to just be careful of, bringing that experience. How can you use that to help mold and guide the resources in your charge, so that in the future they can go on and do bigger and better things. So yeah, again, really, it's about that high level problem solving. Also communicating, with clients. I don't want to say frequently, but you represent really the frontline technical resources of the company. So if mistakes are made, or there's a giant outage, 9 times out of 10, your service desk manager is kind of leading the charge on how you are commanding and controlling that client response. A good service desk manager can maybe make a terrible CSAT not so bad in the eyes of a client, right? So yeah, I'd say salary wise, you're probably looking from, I don't know, 50 to 70 to maybe 80 on the high end if you're really lucky. I tend to prescribe that to the idea that the money is on the technical side, at least for the first couple years of operations on the service desk. That remains to be seen, though, just because my next steps are kind of uncharted. So I don't know. Yeah, I feel like I kind of covered everything. That's it. That's what I got to say about service desk management.
I do want to say, for the long view there, I know a guy, and he was like one of the best managers I've ever had, like really good. And when I met him, he was a service desk manager. That was 10 years ago. Now he was non-technical, no technical background, has some business college, but did not graduate. And now, like, I'm pretty sure that he's clearing $200K a year, and he's the director of this. He's like director of IT service delivery or something like that.
Yeah, I think that's the next step. If you're in that kind of role, that's your next step, is Big Daddy service desk guy.
Yeah. So like, once in all of these positions that we've talked about so far, all have these crazy roles. Network admins, you go get your CCIE, your Cisco certified. I can't remember what it stands for. I'm sorry, it's been too long. Your Cisco certified IE, and you go do that. And like, I knew a guy, and this was like 6 years ago, that he said that he was clearing like 225 before his bonuses that he got from his projects. And every single project that he had that were like multi-100-hour projects, he would clear like, he'd get like 10% or something ridiculous. He was clearing $300,000 a year. And
I said, dude, if he's hiring,
man, no,
I quit my job right now.
He wasn't. No, this guy was an absolute misanthrope. And I mean, that is what it is. And, so, I mean, he was an interesting dude, but hey, man, he stacked a lot of money there, right? Sysadmins, they have it too. There's plenty of sysadmin jobs that you get in systems engineering and systems architecture, and there's $200,000 a year plus jobs there. There's money everywhere. So I'm gonna take security analyst next. Moving on to the next one. This is a little different one, right? Security analysts are going to be less focused on pushing buttons and making changes, whereas sysadmins, network admins, and project engineers are mostly going to be doing the beep boops and making the changes occur or making everything hum. The the security analysts are going to be focused more on, finding vulnerabilities. You've got to be a lot more in tune with the business to be a security analyst. I mean, maybe that's not right. You should be very in tune with the business as a security analyst. I think I've said it I think I've said it before, but I'll say it again. It's important for people in security to remember that they're the tail, not the dog, and that they don't wag the dog wags the tail. And so it's important for security to kind of mold and conform to the business needs. And so security analysts should be looking at potential vulnerabilities, working at prioritization and action plans, to remediate them, handing them to those things to the sysadmin and network admins. It's important for a security analyst to have a firm foundation in both networking and computers. And I would also argue software development lifecycle and management around that, as well as eventually, some experience with like the law and things like that. But that can come further down the line. Anyways, if you get a good generalist, you can convert them into a good security analyst. You can make quite a bit of money there. I've seen some, security analyst jobs start out at like $60K, and those ones are going to be a lot more focused on logs, and it's going to be doing, basic repeatable work. It's probably a smoother transition directly from a tier 2 to that. But I've seen security analyst jobs that are, well over $200,000, and there's tons of them, and they're work from home. And like, the point is that there's plenty. I do want to just remind everybody at this point, since it's been like an hour or something, that there's a 35% growth projected for this particular field. 1 out of every 3 jobs this moment is unfilled. I just talked to someone today who is currently looking to hire a security analyst, right? Just some random guy who I happened to meet at a family event. And this is like, I recommend choosing this one, people. My field needs
cybersecurity
people.
Is huge. Absolutely
cybersecurity huge. Is huge. Please, if you're listening to this episode, yeah, we started this exactly. We started this episode with, I'm going to say 4 cybersecurity things. The hack from Western Digital, the hack on 3CX, Chaos GPT, which I would argue is, at the end of the day, a cybersecurity issue, enacting policy and controls that don't let that thing go off the rails, and the legal stuff with the AI cloned voice that our laws just aren't ready to deal with, right? And everything surrounding that. So cybersecurity is growing. Please pick this one. If you're listening to this episode, and if you want help picking this one, to come over to the Discord. Say, @Matt, I'm interested in cybersecurity. And guess what? I will help you. I will help you make choices that will get you into this field, because I want more people in this field desperately. I feel like it's literally a national security thing. Please join cybersecurity. All right. I'm off my soapbox. Let's do cloud admins. Who wants it? If nobody takes it, I'll just ramble, but I recommend somebody else grabbing it. Really?
Very quiet.
Sound like it's all you, Matt.
Okay. All right. So cloud admins are a lot like sysadmins. But when I think of sysadmins, I think a lot more about on-premise stuff and applications that run on the servers themselves. When I think about cloud admins, I'm thinking about, people who are controlling the cloud policies through Intune, right? Where you might be like setting the equivalent to GPOs, but doing it in Intune, right? Very different experience. Not one for one, and definitely skill set does not translate like one for one at all, right? The policies aren't one for one. The capabilities aren't one for one. Skill set isn't one for one. And there's a whole bunch of new freaking rules, and they are not fun. If you're used to the on-prem stuff. And that's true for everything with the cloud administration. That's why I put it separately, is because networks behave different. If you're a cloud admin, you're probably going to be expected to know how to run VNets or virtual networks in your whatever your platform of choices. If you're a network admin, you're also going to be expected to know that. But like it's the point is that it's different. So you're going to need to know that. You're probably going to need to know about conditional access policies. There's a million dashboards to know about in something like Azure, AWS, or Google Cloud. And like knowing your way around those is a big deal. Now, this one is a big daddy salary. This one's also very hot. I know multiple people that fill like this general role. And, I've seen the opening salaries for this around 100K. I've seen people move from the service desk to this role. Or maybe there was a like short sysadmin stint moving to this role. And I saw them move to this role for like $100,000 a year. And it's a hard role. It's a lot of creativity, a lot of solving, a lot of like research and trying to get, try to figure out how to solve weird problems that other people aren't solving, basically. So you can expect to see 6 figures here for this role. You might see them as low as 80. That's probably a good entry level junior one. I personally know people that are clearing $180,000 a year in a cloud. Like, I guess they're like an architect role, but once again, sky's the limit. Here, as far as I'm concerned, I can't imagine what, something like a Fortune 500 company pays their top cloud architects. I mean, it's gotta be, retire after a few years of working, as long as you're willing to live frivolously type of cash. So, I recommend this one. I mean, this is one that I think this is the future right here. Cloud admins and security analysts, I believe, are the future. I don't have Bureau of Labor Statistics facts on cloud admins. They said that cloud admins are sysadmins, and I just, maybe I'm splitting hairs, but they just feel like they're focused on different things overwhelmingly, right? You don't you don't put a job posting up for a cloud admin and then hand them an ESXi farm, right? And you don't put up a job for a sysadmin and then, expect them to know how to work Azure Data Factory. And it's just, I think they're different. I think it's a miss on the Bureau of Labor Statistics part. So cool. Well, anyone got anything else to add before we close up the episode?
I don't think so. Some really good information here, and I definitely recommend folks take Matt up on his offer now. Drop into the Discord because he could definitely point you in the right direction. Any of us can point you in the right direction depending on what your preference is, what you think your passion may be. Maybe you really don't know what it is yet. Maybe you enjoy all facets of IT, but you're not sure kind of how to hone that in a little bit and specialize. We can likely help point you in the right direction there too.
Yeah. And hey, if we don't know, there are other smart people in that Discord, and I don't have any problem being like, at so-and-so, I know that you know about this thing. Please come help this person. We're a helping community. That's what we're about here. Cool. Well, thank you for tuning in. If you listen this far, then I do think you should just come hang out in the Discord with us. Drop by, say hi, come talk to us about AI.
Yeah.
Come
say what's up.
Yeah. Yep. Come talk to us about hacks. I love talking about breaches. I guarantee you, if you post in the security thread, I will follow up on that. So with that all being said, have a good one. And thanks for hanging out.
Thank you, everybody.
We'll see you guys.